much as we appreciate what they have done, they have woken us up. Some of us, some of the leaders who have lost even their senses of feeling are now back to their senses. And they know what is happening, what will happen in this country. When you see somebody who has been a minister the other day actually walking across borders, lost his kids, when you see mothers walking, crying with the children, then they don't know where to go, crossing borders, that is a time for those of us who witnesses that will know what peace means. And therefore, for the last 1 week, I've been hearing a lot of, popular, kind of statements. The leaders must take responsibility for the kind of, statement that we're making. It might be sweet today. You may be heard by your electorates. They might want to applaud you. But of course, when the consequence comes, when the action has been taken, and when this country goes to dogs, then that's the time you'll know whether you're a president, whether you're an MP, whether you're not. Then we all feel the consequences of our actions. Honourable Speaker, one thing is actually, this country leadership is actually a country that is actually, leaders are actually reactive by nature. Even the president is actually reactive by nature. You only react to situations. And that cannot be able to help anybody. There has been a lot of problems in this country. People have been promised paradise. The young men and ladies today who are demonstrating have been told that once these governments come in, when we take the leadership, the youth will be employed, they'll be given money, the better education, jobs. But 1.5 years down the line, things have changed. The paradise that have gone has become a hell in the world. Youth are unemployed, people are employed, a lot of impunity being used. There's a lot of discrimination. Money is being looted left and right. The other day we were being told that the government made the coffers empty. Then suddenly in 1 year's time, people are carrying gun bags, money with their gun bags in Harambis. So where is this money coming from? If money has been looted by the previous regimes. Honourable Speaker, there's no doubt that this country, all of us, the leadership, must go back to the table and listen to one another. And the first and foremost thing that we need to talk about is for this country to heal, to come together, and believe that we can do better. This is a very rich country. This is a very beautiful, that we love it. We have no other homes to go. So let us do this beautiful country to the dogs. Honourable Speaker, what is happening today is that everybody wants to make easy money to the advantage of the poor, to the advantage of disadvantaged people. Every leader wants to make money. The institutions, the oversight institutions, the parliament has been captured. We have been called in the State House, we have been called by your parties to do ABCD. We don't reason. You are elected by people. You are not elected by the president. You are not elected by your party leader. So every morning when there's a bill, you are summoned to party office or State House. You have been elected by people, not by the State House people or by your party leader. And the consequences of that kind of, blindly following the leadership, party leaders, and being so, obedient to the party is what we are now, the consequences that we are facing today. Bills have been done with impunity here in this office, these houses. Bills have been rushed We are not even allowed to think, to reason together. The bills that we're making these houses, the two houses, is actually being revised every hour. We have been told to say yes, aye, and I will say aye. And this is the consequence today we're facing. Had we not listened to, have we listened together? Have we got listened together? When the problems started, the time the house levy issues came, we all talked about these same issues. The people complained, the youth complained, everybody complained. The roadside pronouncement of projects where the money is not even available. The jobs that we said we're going to create, which is not achievable. Then you expect this kind of business and this kind of upheavals to happen. Honorable Speaker, I think what is happening, what I want to tell is, if this kind of situation continues, there will be upheaval in this country. The jobs we are looking for will not be available. Crime will increase. Kenya is sending its soldiers to Haiti. Haiti is actually a country 7,000 kilometers from here. The consequences of what's happening today, where our officers are going there, the police officers, is because of this kind of business. The youth there was upheaval. The government, the country is taken over by goons. It's rape and roping people. Therefore, I want us to learn from the mistakes that we have done and to correct these things. Honorable Speaker, as it is, we need to have a major change. Because, as I said, our oversight institutions have failed this country. Anti-corruption, I don't know who will oversight anti-corruption. Parliament, I don't know who will oversight the Parliament. Office of the DPP, you see cases, corruption cases taking too long. The Golden Bug corruption, it has taken many years, and everybody wants free. Those guys who, I don't know, looted a lot of money, and I don't know those dams, they have gone free. They've been released by DPP office and the judiciary. Parliament is making punitive laws. And corruption is just dragging on the legs, on the feet. So we need an oversight institution that oversees the oversight institutions like Parliament and all these things. I don't know who will do it, whether it will be done by Ombudsman. I don't know where we're going to have an institution that will oversee all of us. But as it is, I think this country has failed to reason together. Honorable Speaker, one thing is actually, now that the President has told us, Kenya is actually undergoing a revolution. It might be, you might see it as, as a joke. But let's say what's happening now is a revolution. If you remember what happened in the Arab Springs, what has happened in Sudan, what has happened in Egypt, this is the how it is started. And I want to tell young ladies and men who went to the street, we applaud them for waking us up. But I think I want them to, actually, because they have been infiltrated by goons. Whatever objective they may have, the goons have infiltrated them. And this kind of mess, they're looting in the town. The shops they're breaking, and the shop that is being looted actually belongs to the Gen Zs. Those who sell the electronics, those who sell the mobiles, are all young men and women. So have we lost or gained anything so far? We lost so much. Honorable Speaker, one thing I want to say is this country needs healing. We need to talk about taxation policies, because the biggest thing we are doing. The president one day wakes up and announced tax increase. You announce the next day tax levies, fuel levy increase. You announce the next day roads being constructed. road levy, fuel levy. And you know, anything that you tax, especially when it comes to fuel and all these things, you expect to affect everybody across the board. We might need to raise money, yes, we have no problem with it. But you must at least also weigh the alternative options. This country is a very rich country. We have not explored on agriculture. This country actually is undeveloped. Kenya has now become a consumer. We only consume food that we import from our neighborhood. We have beautiful land, potential land that is idle. Men and women have grabbed big land because it's excess. They don't even know what to do with it. They are waiting for a day that they can sell it at higher prices. The money and the other Kenyans who could produce food don't have the land. So I think we need a land distribution again. We must go back to the drawing board. People who have excess land should give back land to people who can plant. The young men and women who are not employed, if they get the land, they're going to tilt it and produce food and employ themselves. For those who have excess land, please, we want this country, these people to go give back land. The land belongs to Kenyans. If we want to have, you know, as a bank, for future harvest, or getting more money, then I think it's the right time that we do land redistribution. Honorable Speaker, one other thing is actually, as I said, we need to have creation of employment. Employment does not mean that people must be employed only in offices. Employment can become many ways. Self-employment. If you give these same young men and women some money to go and do business, you'll see all over Nairobi CBD, we have so many stalls that are run by these same groups. And they're doing very well. They travel all the way to China, they go to Dubai, they bring in commodities. But the problem is when they come to the airport, they cannot even make a break even for profits. They've been taxed, they've been harassed. So we need to improve and give kind of incentive to those who are working hard. We give incentives to those who want to bring their commodities here. These are all Kenyans, actually, where they're not coming from outside. But when you want to tax a small goods that have been brought by the youth, that airport is actually becoming a place for harassing people. Investors are running away from us and going to our neighbors. So taxation does not make the country rich. So we want us to improve on the creation of employment. Actually, corruption is a cancer in this country, done with impunity. So one other thing is, Honorable Speaker, we don't know where to run to. In case now, even in this parliament, when we call the corrupt people here, the governors and everybody who have been said that they have stolen money, they listen to the committee, the Auditor General brings his report, the COB brings the report. From there, it ends there. No follow-ups, no prosecution, no nothing. And the impunity continues. So I think we need to do better in this country. Honorable Speaker, what I want to tell my colleagues is, as leaders, we need to be a bit serious. We must be responsible to us, and we must be answerable to the public that elected us. This country needs heavy investment. I know there are a lot of loans that we've collected without any proper planning. We need to go back to the drawing board and say how best we can be able to create jobs in this country. Learning institutions are dead. Education actually is obsolete. What we are learning today, we're hearing a lot of every year, every 10 years, there's a new curriculum. CBC, I don't know, 844, all these things. The neighborhood, our neighborhood, Uganda and Tanzania, the same curriculum is there. So if the curriculum has to change, we have to change to a job creation kind of, the job opportunities. That is, we tell the university guys to be able to change their curriculums, to look at the markets, the ITs, a lot of things that can at least be able to create jobs for the youth. but we're following up obsolete curriculums that will not help this institution, this country. Education actually is becoming unaffordable. It's just expensive, unnecessarily expensive. Healthcare is very expensive. Not every Kenyan can afford any treatment because everything is commercialized. You go to a pharmacy, there's no control of budget, of price. You go to a doctor's, they charge you exorbitantly. It's so expensive. So the poor man and poor lady cannot afford health care. We're being told that we're going to be given free health care. NHF almost dead. It has become now a place for getting money for the politicians. Every campaign time, people withdraw money there. Money is being misused. The taxpayer money is being misused. You pay for health care. You don't have even drugs in the hospitals. We have devolved functions for health. The money, 126 billion is given to the health, Ministry of Health now, the new budget. Where are you taking all that money? And you have only five hospitals, level 6 and 5. The rest of functions have gone to counties. And the money is being held in the National Assembly, at the national level. You have so many institutions that duplicate these functions. In the Ministry of Water, we have almost many authorities, 3 or 4. We have water agencies, and they're all doing the same functions. The county is doing water, the agencies are doing water, the authorities are doing water. Where are we going? This is the same money, the taxpayers' money. Then we have so many unfunctional regional bodies. Huh? No, the water board, Wajir Nini, and Southern Wasanyiro, coast development authorities, so many authorities. So the money, the little money that have been put to a better place so that we can have a better output is actually divided to be stolen and for paying for wage bills, which is just unbelievable, so high. So I think with those few remarks, I want to applaud the president also, now that he has come back to his senses. Today, I was hearing that there's 6 days dialoguing, where even the Raila was there and everybody was there. So I think what I want to tell is that I want to tell Kenyans, please, whatever you're going to do, as much as we are suffering, we also need to think of our future, the future of this country. With those few remarks, I want to thank I want to support the motion. Thank you.
Senator Shakila Abdalla.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa nafasi hii na mimi kutoa kauli yangu. Kwanza nitoe rambirambi zangu za pole kwa wale waliopoteza maisha yao katika hawa vijana wetu wakati wa maandamano. Pili pia niseme pole kwa wale ambao wanaugua wako kwenye mahospitali. Tunawaombea afueni, wapate afya yao irudi kamili na warudi kwenye shughuli zao. Mheshimiwa Spika, hii nchi yetu ina shida 3. Na hizo shida 3 ndio inasababisha hii nchi kutotawalika ama kuwa na misukosuko. Shida ya kwanza Mheshimiwa Spika ni ukabila, ya pili ni ufisadi, ya 3 ni ukosefu wa usawa, inequality kwa kimombo. Hii nchi na hawa Gen Z ambao wamekuja Mheshimiwa Spika, wamekuja kutondoshea haya mambo 3. Kutuonyesha kwamba ikiwa tutaendelea na haya mambo 3 basi hakuna pahala tutaenda. Wametuonyesha wao hawako na ufisadi wala hawana ukabila na hawanataka usawa. Na ikiwa sisi kama nchi tutafuata hii filosofia ya hawa Gen Z, basi bila shaka tutaleta mabadiliko katika nchi yetu na nchi itakuwa inaweza kutawalika. Mheshimiwa Spika, vijana hawa ni vijana wamesoma, ni vijana hawana balaa, ni wale vijana ambao walipata elimu ya bure, elimu ambayo ilikuwa ya maana maradufu wakati wa Kibaki akiwa na msaidizi wake Mheshimiwa Kalonzo. Kwa hivyo kitu tunachoomba ni hawa vijana watachukuliwa kwa watu wasichukuliwe nguvu na mapolisi, bali ni vijana washirikiane na wao, polisi washirikiane na wao, na pia waachwe kufanya Mheshimiwa Spika, hawa vijana wametoka si kwa sababu ya finance ambazo zinawakwaza katika maeneo yao wanayoishi. Sababu nyingi zinazowakwaza Mheshimiwa, nikitaja chache, kwanza ni kwa sababu ya ongezeko la school fees. Vijana utakuta wengi hawasomi, wamefukuzwa, wako majumbani wanarandaranda. Utakuta ongezeko la mambo ya university, pia umeme umeongezeka, mambo ya housing levy, ushuru umeongezeka maradufu. Utakuta hawa vijana mara nyingi hawana njia ya kujihami kwa vovote. Na vile vile pia ukiangalia vijana kama hawa, utapata ya kwamba wanaangalia, ukisema ukosefu wa usawa, ni kwamba nitatoa mfano wa makazi. Utaenda ofisi ukute kazi kuanzia juu mpaka chini ni kabila moja ama mbili. Na Kenya tuko na makabila zaidi ya 40. Utakuta Mheshimiwa, nitakupa mfano Bwana Spika, kule Lamu Port. Ile Lamu Port kuna vijana wetu 100 walichukuliwa miaka 4 iliyopita wakiwa ni kama macasuals. Na mpaka leo vijana hao ni vibarua, hawajawahi kuandikwa permanent, na ni kwa sababu utakuta watu wanakuja nyuma, wako pale KPA wanachukuliwa, ati hii ni kwaya ya watu 100 wanakuja wanachukuliwa, wanaandikwa permanent and pensionable. Wale vijana wako pale miaka 4 bado wako vibarua. Ukosefu wa usawa kama huo unafanya vijana kuleta sintofahamu na taharuki. Mheshimiwa, ile poti kuhamishwa Mombasa pia, hiyo ni njia moja ambayo pia ilileta unyonge na udhaifu mkubwa Mombasa, kuonekana kwamba ni kama maonevu, kwa sababu ile ndio rasilimali ambayo iko pale Mombasa, lakini unakuta ilihamishwa ikapelekwa sehemu zingine, na watu Mombasa na vijana bado wanarandaranda, hakuna makazi. Nitakupeleka Mheshimiwa, ukienda Witu ni division. Ikifika saa 12 inawekwa curfew. Wa upande huo hapiti huku, wa huku hapiti huku. Kwa nini watu kama wale wawekewa curfew? Kwa sababu wanalindwa watu wengine fulani pale. Kwa hivyo mambo kama hayo ya ukosefu wa usawa ndio yanaleta hii shida ya hawa Gen Z. Wamekuja kuamka na wameona kwamba hii nchi ni lazima kuwe na usawa, kwa sababu sote ni wa Kenya. Ufisadi Mheshimiwa Spika, ufisadi utakuta wanakuwa sacrifice ni wale small ship. Anaenda kushikwa director, anaenda kushikwa manager, na waziri ako free. Director na manager wanachukua order kutoka kwa wakubwa wao, na wanaambiwa isipoenda hivyo basi wao ndio wataumia. Na wakishachukua zile order, maneno inabadilika, kukichafuka inakuwa wao ndio sacrificing God. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, huu ufisadi pia hata hapa bunge, wabunge wanaitwa kwa PG, wanaenda wanaambiwa lazima huu mswada mupitishe. Kwa nini mbunge akubali aseme mimi nimepewa milioni 2 kupitisha huu mswada? Kwa nini rais atoe milioni 2 akijua kama huo mswada ni mzuri, ahonge mbunge ili aupitishe? Kwa hivyo hiyo yote ni ufisadi kutoka juu mpaka chini. Huu ufisadi na tunataka kusema kwamba ikiwa ni EACC pia, ukienda EACC kupeleka kesi unaulizwa unamjua nani, ama huyu umemleta kwa hii kesi anamjua nani? Kwa sababu mimi mwenyewe niko na ushahidi. Wakati nilipokuwa chair wa Child Welfare Society of Kenya, nilipata hii organization iko na ufisadi wa hali ya juu. Nilipoenda kupeleka kesi EACC pamoja na ushahidi, waliniuliza kwamba huyu mama ako connected na nani kabla hawajamgusa. Kwa hivyo haya mambo ya ufisadi yanaanzishwa huko juu yakiendelea chini. Si ati ni kitu ambacho kwamba ni ofisa ama ni mtu mdogo ameamua kujifanyia yale mambo, anapewa order. Hata hao wabunge wako hapo wakipitisha ile kitu, walipewa order na rais kwamba hii kitu ni lazima ipite, na wakahongwa. Kwa hivyo kama ni kusema ukweli, ni ukweli usemwe na mambo yajulikane wazi wazi. Mheshimiwa Rais, Mheshimiwa Spika, tunasema kwamba ufisadi ikiwa utaendelea na ikiwa rais hatajaribu kung'ang'ana na ufisadi, manake ndio ufisadi mkubwa, basi tujue hakuna pahala tutaenda hii nchi. Kwa sababu wale ambao ni mafisadi sahihi, rais amejitokeza kimasomaso kuwalinda na kuwa protect. Kwa hivyo ina maana hajaamua kupigana na ufisadi kama rais wa nchi. Tunataka rais ajaribu, apambane, na kama hawezi atoe nafasi, wanaume wachukue hiyo nafasi, wafanye kazi. We need change in this country. Tunataka mabadiliko, na mabadiliko tumeletewa na vijana, na wasirudi nyuma. Tunawaunga mkono, tuko na wao. Tumesema kwamba hawa vijana waende hivyo hivyo, na wameonyesha umahiri na wameonyesha ungwana ya kwamba hawana haja ya mali ya mtu, hawana haja ya kuiba wala kuharibu. Wao wanataka haki yao, na haki ni lazima ipatikane. Mheshimiwa Spika, nikimalizia, mimi si mtu wa maneno mengi. Nataka kuambia vijana wachukue kura. Wachukue kura kwa wingi. Hiyo ndio silaha ya kupambana na adui. Asanteni sana. Nimeshukuru. Naunga mkono huu mswada. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Asante. Sasa tunampata Senator Mbugua George.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, allow me to appreciate your office and the majority and the minority leaders for giving us this opportunity so that we can speak on the status of our country. Allow me also, Mr. Speaker, to send my condolences to the people, both the Gen Zs and the police and the general public who perished during this time of these skirmishes. Mr. Speaker, the events surrounding the debate, the passing and the withdrawal of the finance bill were unprecedented. We've never had this issue, we've never seen our young people coming out in the numbers they came out. And Mr. Speaker, it marked a turning point in the governance of this country. Honorable Speaker, I would want to take this opportunity to thank the young people because they have woken up, they have made the leadership of this country to wake up and to decide to change the course this country was heading to. Honorable Speaker, the finance bill was just a trigger of the many things which have not gone well in this country. And the young people came out clearly telling us that they are not doing these things for themselves only, they were doing for their parents, their brothers and sisters, and those people probably who don't have the energy as they do to come out and speak the way they did. I thank them for that. Mr. Speaker, this country for many years has had to deal with the problem of inequalities. The gap between the poor and the rich have been widening to the extent that we've agreed that there are those people who are called wananchi and wanyanchi. And what the young people are telling us is that these things must change. Honorable Speaker, the Gen Z have said in very clear language that they don't want so many stories. They want action. And Honorable Speaker, I will attempt to bring 3 action points which I think would help to alleviate the problems of the young people. Honorable Speaker, Article 54 and 55 of the Constitution addresses the issues of the young people of this country and also the issue of the people with disability in this country. And in the attempt to actualize these articles, Mr. Speaker, Parliament, in its own wisdom, enacted the Access to Government Procurement Act of 2015, whereby, as a law, it was decided that 30% of all government procurement will go to the marginalized groups, that is the youth, the women, and the persons with disability. But what has happened, Mr. Speaker, we all know, because we live in this country, that this law has never been actualized as it was intended. Honorable Speaker, just to give you an example, we operate a budget of about 3 trillion. And if we assume that 30% of that go to development, it means we have about 1 trillion which goes to the purchase of goods and services. And if this law was to be followed to the letter, about 300 billion would go to these marginalized groups. Honorable Speaker, our honorable colleague has talked about the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority. These are the people who are supposed to make sure that this act is adhered to. I think it is important as an action point, Mr. Speaker, that we call these people here and they tell us what is wrong, why have they not been able to actualize this so that the young people of this country, the people with disabilities, and the women benefit as the parliament of this country intended to. Also, as an action point, Mr. Speaker, because the young people have spoken and they have said they want to see action, I would urge the government and this House, because we just entered the new finance budget cycle, we must prioritize in the first quarter that the procurement which the government will engage in should go to the youth and the other marginalized groups. Honorable Speaker, when these young people were demonstrating and they were coming to Parliament, you could see the anger, the determination. And then I pondered and asked, what is this which have made these people very angry? And I thought, probably among this young generation, there are people among them who are educated by their parents, and their parents spent everything, probably even sold their land, because we've been told in this country since we were young that usome, utapata kazi mzuri, na utaishi maisha mazuri. And these young people went to school in the hope of getting jobs and helping their parents. But they were faced with helplessness. Mr. Speaker, Article 55 of our Constitution, as read together with the Persons with Disability Act of 2013, reserved 5% of employment in all government ministries and parastatus to persons with disability. And if I can read for you, Mr. Speaker, one article said that this was to be actualized progressively. 10 years down the line, Mr. Speaker, according to the status report, which was just released the other day on the status report on disability, this act has not been properly implemented. In the report, Mr. Speaker, we came to learn that over 240 government agencies in this country have never employed any single person with a disability, yet we have a law. And the excuse they give is the Constitution says it has to be implemented progressively. And because, Mr. Speaker, the youth have said that we need action, at some point, maybe these are a constitutional moment where we have to look at the weaknesses of some of the laws we have. And I think it's time we remove that term progressive so that we can be able to enforce this. In that said report, Mr. Speaker, out of the entire workforce of the Republic of Kenya, only 1.32% are persons with disability. So when you see some of these young people with a lot of anger, you imagine that their children whose parents were disabled and they thought they would help them, but it could never come to be. Mr. Speaker, I was very happy the other day when I heard His Excellency the President saying it is time that we wind up some of the parastatus which are performing the same function. In that note, Mr. Speaker, I want to bring to the attention of this House that when it comes to matters disability in this country, Parliament enacted the National Council for Persons with Disability Act 2003, which is the legally mandated body to handle matters to do with disability. Also in this country, Mr. Speaker, we have another fund called the National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya, which is registered as a the Trustees Perpetual Succession Act, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this body received government's money over the last years, over the last 20 years, and it has never been subjected to any parliamentary oversight. This institution, in spite of receiving hundreds of millions of shillings from the Exchequer, it has never been audited by the Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, when I raised a question on the floor of this House so that we can engage this body, it took a whole year before the trustees could agree to appear before the committee. And when they came, Mr. Speaker, and we asked them what they do, they act as an investment company, and all the money they have been receiving, they have bought buildings, and whatever goes to help the persons with disabilities is a mere 30%. Mr. Speaker, I want to bring to the attention of this House that among the other things which shocked us when the trustees of this fund appeared to us, they have put a whole Kenya shillings 780 million in a fixed account. This is taxpayers' money, which was meant to help the persons with disability. As an action point, Mr. Speaker, I would be calling on this House that we call these two institutions here and they address how they have been spending the money given to them. Mr. Speaker, I would be imploring on this House, Mr. Speaker, that we must insist that this money, which is taxpayers' money, put in fixed deposits, be immediately made available and distributed to the various disabled groups in this country. Honorable Speaker, Mahatma Gandhi once said that the true measure of any society can be found on how it treats its most vulnerable members. And these are the children, the elderly, and the persons with disability, Mr. Speaker. As the National Assembly attempts to amend the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, we would be requesting that they don't touch the cash transfers which helps these vulnerable people in our society. On the issue of public debt, Honorable Speaker, the executive, through the President, has attempted to audit what Kenya owes to other countries. And Mr. Speaker, that issue put parliaments in a very awkward position. Because to an average Kenyan, what they know is before any debt is taken, Parliament is involved. Parliament should know which institution, which country is lending us money, how much they are lending us, at what interest, what is the repayment period. So when we reach a situation where, Mr. Speaker, it's like we don't know how much we owe, then the Kenyans are asking, what is the role of Parliament? This House, through the Parliamentary Service Commission, Mr. Speaker, have employed the best minds in the Republic. At a click of a button, Mr. Speaker, you would have expected that Parliament can come out and say, according to us, as the representatives of the people, this is the amount of money that the government of Kenya owes, and these are the people who have lent us money. But it should never be that we are where we are, that we don't know how much we owe. This one, Mr. Speaker, put the institution of Parliament into a very awkward position. Mr. Speaker, I also want to address the issue of deprecation of duties. When we devolved through our Constitution 2010, Mr. Speaker, and we created the counties, very, very many functions are duplicated. When you go to our counties, Mr. Speaker, you find an agriculture officer paid by the national government, another one by the county government. You'll find a children officer paid by the county government, another one by the national government. I think it is time, Mr. Speaker, that Senate take the lead and audit the 2020 Constitution and ask ourselves, is it really sustainable? What are the weaknesses that we've had over the last 12 years? Because honestly, Mr. Speaker, things are not working. The young people spoke very clearly, and as I repeat, and they said they want action. It is now upon us, the leaders of today, that we must sit down, and I'm happy that is what we are doing. Mr. Speaker, even as we handle the issue of Gen Z, for those of us who are planning to go into senior positions, we must be prepared that yes, the Gen Zs are there, but after them, the Generation Alpha are coming. These are even more. It is a high time that we realize that in our public engagements, we must bring everything on the table. There is nothing to hide, because this country, Mr. Speaker, belongs to all of us and more so to our children. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion, and then thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Senator Manzo Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the two leaders of the House for coming up with this motion and for summarizing it very well. Mr. Speaker, what happened on 25th of last month is unprecedented in this country. Young people go to demonstrate peacefully, Mr. Speaker, but the moment there are peaceful demonstrations and the police think that they should be dispersed, then under the Public Order Act and this regulation they are under, which are actually 20 years old, the last ones were done by former Attorney General Amos Wako, other consequent ministers did not. But even with those old regulations, and even with Public Order Act and the Penal Code, there has to be a proclamation, loud and clear in a speaker, by escorting police of a level of an Inspector General, that the peaceful demonstrations have turned riotous, and therefore people must disperse. After 15 minutes, that proclamation order is supposed to be repeated. And then now, whoever doesn't disperse, Mr. Speaker, then action can be taken. What I expected the police to do is just guard businesses and let the demonstrators do their thing, and I believe no one would have died. Unfortunately, we have lost 41 people, and quite a number of people are in hospitals. In Makueni, Mr. Speaker, we are burying 4 people. We buried one last Saturday, and another one is being buried today. There is a funeral on next Friday of a young man who was shot actually by an OCS, and on Saturday there is another one. We have people who are still missing and are not known where they are. So my condolences to the families who have lost their dear ones, and also wishing quick recovery to those in hospital with all manner of injuries, from head injuries to bullet wounds, Mr. Speaker. I really want to say that although the President has promised to bury the deceased, up to now we buried Rex last Friday in Machakos, a young man who was going to work. But because he happened to have been in Rastafaris and happened to have passed near the crowds, a police officer decided to shoot him. And after shooting him, when the young people cried that he could get help and should be taken to hospital, and even wanted to help them with their doctors, the policeman, who is very well known and has not been charged so far, Mr. Speaker, said let the young man die. So they watched him bleed to death, yet he had just injuries at the leg, which would have been salvaged. But therefore, so there is no compensation yet. There's no reprieve. There's no one who has been taken to court. And there's no one who has been sacked or any action taken against that particular. So I'm sure the JNCs are watching, and this is one of the issues they really want to deal with as time goes by. Mr. Speaker, the cause of this was the finance bill. And the finance bill, public participation took place. And I remember at KICC, Kenyans really pleaded with the state and with the parliament. But unfortunately, with the finance bill, in fact, long time ago, during the days of Moi, the Minister for Finance, after reading budget, the next day you will hear price list given for beer and for this and that. That doesn't happen today exactly. But, Mr. Speaker, the finance bill is designed at Treasury with the experts, some from international organizations which fund us, then goes to Cabinet, then comes to the House goes to do public participation. So the input of the people, unfortunately, very little was adopted, and very little has been adopted over the years. The same bill now came to the House, and the usual lobby took place, and members of Parliament, the majority voted yes, and irritated the young people because they did not imagine the hardships life will face. Mr. Speaker, I have engaged some of these people who are in these demonstrations. And most of them, Mr. Speaker, are graduates. They come from poor families. Even as graduates, they have tried to join the army. They have been asked for bribes. Police, the same. Any of KWS. And some of them, Mr. Speaker, some of the stories I've received from constituents from Makueni, they have even sold land to raise the bribe of 300,000. After you pay the bribe, you cannot see the people you pay the bribe, and your child is not taken either to the army, police, or forest, or KWS. And therefore, you end up with a very depressed young person with all the talents, surrounded by poverty, unable to fight poverty, and watching now the cost of living rising. And they have told me, Mr. Speaker, they rather die doing something. They rather die visiting us here. They rather die visiting the House of the Hill. They rather die visiting the judiciary, or those they think have let them down. And that's a very difficult position to correct. And quite a number, a majority of them, quite a number, have that idea that they rather die doing something than just commit suicide or do something else. So that level of depression, Mr. Speaker, has been compounded by when they saw the church support politics in an unfair manner, and also they've seen the wasteful lifestyles of some of us in government, some of us who already are doing many things. And it's also very expensive to move government from one place to another, even when they are doing important things. A good example is a recent visit to the US, Mr. Speaker. Really, some of the people went to the US, even if it was a paid-up trip by a benevolent person. I'm sure the governors had to spend their own monies for the days they stayed there, even some extended. There were very many idlers in that trip, and even one of the very frustrating things to many young people here is the issue of disability, which has been talked to by the wonderful senator. And I participated in the 1998 bombing where a lot of people became disabled. And we summoned the body dealing with disability here, Mr. Speaker. And the stories they gave were horrifying. We asked them why they're not accommodated, even these ones who were bombed. Truly, government has failed people in that regard. Most of these children were born, were either a year old or were born after. And the ones who were a year old or so, quite a number of them, including the driver of Mr. Kamodo, had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. That 1-year-old of 1997, who is now a Gen Z, never saw the father ever be compensated, who woke up to go to work, but never came back, having been bombed and having died in the bomb. A lot of the people were just transiting. Every single county in this country was affected. And all these people have gone to court, people have been in hospital, they have been frustrated over the years. Yet, when this trip was done for the US, the people we sent from the committee or the people we send from this house and any other government person we engage. In fact, we engaged the minister in charge of foreign affairs. The embassy in Washington was very frustrating on this particular matter when we went to Washington. And many other government departments have been. So what do you expect people who have relatives they have been taken care of and have seen poverty and suffering all the years and nobody listens? What do you expect them to do? So it goes on, and then all they can see is people, lifestyles which are extravagant on leaders, instead of every leader cutting costs and getting to help the people. When you come to this particular finance bill, although the Speaker for National Assembly has promised that it is going to be dealt with later, and although something very unusual has happened, the President, after lobbying for the passing of the bill, decided not to sign it, but sent it back to be deleted clause by clause. He really threw the members of National Assembly under the bus. It is like somebody who has vomited, be told to take back their vomit. We remained here as the Senate. They ran away. They don't want to come back, for there are no proper facilities to deal with the whole two houses right now. But today then, if you are to follow the, an act of parliament, and under Article 115, which has not yet been interpreted by the courts, and there was contestation from Honorable Otiende, who wanted it repealed instead of be deleted. Mr. Speaker, then that law, 14 days have lapsed, could become law today. What is happening is that by the fear of Gen Zs, no one can announce it has become law, no one can implement it. But I hope when Parliament comes to delete it, then at some point, the National Assembly must still come up with another finance bill. But the real legal act is to repeal, is not to do any other thing. Mr. Speaker, so that others could also contribute, there is still high cost of living. The finance bill which was proposed did not help either. I have seen the Minister for Roads insisting on increasing fuel levies and trying to do public participation, which is cosmetic. This will still increase the cost of living. Some of the things the Gen Z contested have now been enacted in the region, and we are part of the deals of the region. We have conventions in East Africa, and therefore some of these costs will still come up to us. When it comes to dealing with justice, you have heard of the role of ODPP. It has been very controversial. ESCC, fighting of corruption. We know the nolle prosequi, which have been entered when there is sufficient evidence and they are willing prosecutors to prosecute. But a political deal is arrived at, and something happens, and somebody who is known to have looted from the people's coffers goes scot-free and goes on even to join politics and continue messing it up, Mr. Speaker. There has been seen impunity, incompetence in cabinet. We have the chief laws here. The regulations, luckily, have been annulled by this House because it has stood with the people, Mr. Speaker, and it is the next motion after this. We have seen extrajudicial abductions in Makueni. One has happened this weekend. A nominated councillor, MCA, was abducted on Saturday, taken around in circles, kept in Communicado. When we made noise yesterday, he was dropped in Makindu town, very sick. And the abductors were asking him about an incident where there was a problem at the funeral of an MCA with a local member of parliament who had voted yes, causing a scuffle in the funeral. And these people who tortured this MCA were asking him why he had brought problems, yet it is the MP himself who caused the problem and is the one who started attacks on the MCA. But that is extrajudicial. If you have committed an offense, you have to be arrested, statements written, and charged in 24 hours. And therefore, these abductions, some of the kids of Gen Z who have been abducted from the demonstrations have been found dead, one in a quarry. We hope the others are safe, and if they are safe, the government should release them. The president promised that there are no people going to be found in River Yala. I hope after this incident, those who have been kidnapped will not be, found in the River Yala. And we've had, the issue of, so that I may go faster, Mr. Speaker, let me conclude with the issue of pensions. When people retire in this country, Mr. Speaker, and these Gen Zs have their parents who have retired, their pension never comes easy. If it is a teacher, if it is a former President Uhuru Kenyatta, their money just disappear. And these people are tortured. They have reached 60. They are unable to begin a business. They are waiting for their money, and their money has failed to come. Mr. Speaker, all these frustrating situations in the country must change. We hope Iebc is going to be put into place quickly. We hope a lot of Gen Zs are now raising signatures for members of National Assembly who are incompetent from August this year. I am very sure most of them will be removed because of what they have been doing to the people, and quite a number of by-elections will ensue. So the Gen Z continue with the hashtag Ruto must go. Something must be done in this country, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that the Gen Zs are satisfied and all Kenyans are happy. We are a very hard-working nation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Karen Nyam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start by giving my respects to the young souls who lost their lives during the recent protests that we witnessed as a country. And as a mother, it hurts to my stomach to lose our children in that manner. I want to send my condolences to the families of the ones who lost their loved ones. And I want to say it is not in vain. As a Senate, we are here reflecting and debating on the actions due to the contribution of your children. I also want to thank the CS of Health, CS Nakumicha, for waiving the hospital bills of those young people who got injured, and the President for committing to take up the funeral expenses and compensating the families, Mr. Speaker. It is also very concerning the silence of the IG of Police, Mr. Koome. We are yet to get a comment from him on the happenings of this country in those 2 weeks that we witnessed unprecedented actions by our young people. Mr. Speaker, the country is experiencing a youth bulge. 75% of our population is people below the age of 35 years, Mr. Speaker, and that is not necessarily a bad thing, because it means that we have a large workforce that, if put into use, can give us great dividends of the economy, Mr. Speaker. And when the President, His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, took out of office, when he assumed office as the President of Kenya, we have seen deliberate efforts that are aimed at utilizing that youth bulge, Mr. Speaker. The affordable housing project currently is employing between 140,000 youth to 200,000, Mr. Speaker. And you can see that he had thought about this large number of youth. Another program, Mr. Speaker, of the Finya computer utoe dollar that has been made fun of in this country. It is a program that, if utilized well by our young people and if taken up, can end up turning them into taxpayers, and they can make use of their skills. Because, Mr. Speaker, every year we are churning out between 600,000 and 700,000 young people from our universities, from our TVETs, from our high schools. They come and join the job market, and they don't find employment that is commensurate to their training and aspirations, Mr. Speaker. But another thing that the President has been doing, it is the export of labor. And I've also heard people criticizing this program, saying that we want to make it at home. We can make it at home, and we don't have to export labor to other countries, Mr. Speaker. I want to say that there are families in this country who are poverty-ridden, and all they survive on is sending a member of their family outside the country, Mr. Speaker. One of the leading countries, the Philippines, one of their biggest economy contribution that contributes to 12% of the GDP is a labor export, Mr. Speaker. And those efforts have been done by that country deliberately. And that is what the President has been trying to achieve. I want to challenge the youth. Now that we have affordable fertilizer, we have vast land, available land, agricultural land in the country, I want to challenge them to get involved in agribusiness. That there is huge potential in agribusiness, and you can become self-employed, and you can be part of the nation building in that way. Here in Nairobi, our young people are usually used during the political process. We rely on them heavily for campaigns. They are a tool for creating hype for us candidates. But when you get into office, for example, your hands are tied because you want to help them, but the available opportunities are not that many. Mr. Speaker, if I open for you my DM, my Instagram direct message now, the amount of messages, people requesting me or begging me to assist them get employment, Mr. Speaker. And I have observed this over time, and I have been wondering, I've been asking myself, how long can we sustain this kind of desperation among the youth? Mr. Speaker, we have an advantage of having a youth, a large youth that has energy, that has a lot of potential, it is largely educated, and it is time as a country we come up with ways for utilizing these young people, because when they are not gainfully employed, when they are not channeling their energy the right way, it is how we end up getting instability and even being exposed to political triggers that we saw last week, the last 2 weeks. Because, Mr. Speaker, even if the youth came to the streets, they were coming to the streets because of a lot of other reasons. Lack of employment for them and their mothers, and a myriad of reasons that took them to the streets. Because, truth be told, the finance bill had very little to do with it. And the misinformation that was also in the streets, in the youth that took to the streets, was noticeable, Mr. Speaker. Because I saw ladies carrying placards protesting the increase of taxes on sanitary products and or diapers, Mr. Speaker, which is not the truth. Who in their right senses can dare tax sanitary towels and diapers in Kenya, Mr. Speaker? The thing that the government wanted to achieve by introducing an eco-levy on imported sanitary towels and diapers from China, the substandard ones, the bad quality ones, is to have us be self-sufficient in that field, because, truth be told, there is a huge demand for pads and a huge demand for diapers. So if we start and if we grow that industry, it will create jobs for our people, and it is those people these young people who took the streets are the ones who are going to benefit. Instead of that labor going to the Chinese youth, it will end up being the Kenyan labor that we are utilizing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am on record before this House as tasking the Finance Committee to give me, or to give this House an audit on how many of our young people have benefited from the AGPO program. And I wanted to know, in our parastatals, in our county governments, how many youth people are getting tenders that rightfully belong to them, Mr. Speaker. And we have to interrogate these opportunities that are already available, that the youth are not going to our young people and wrongfully going to the wrong hands, and we end up having the situation like the one we had. And on the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, I am one of those people who can swear by the President of this country, His Excellency, Dr. William Ruto. I believe that the intentions of the President were in the right place with that bill. I want to disagree with Senator Shakila, who claimed here that the President is a perpetrator of corruption. And it's only that this debate is interrupted, and that's why we did not raise a point of order. But nothing can be further from the truth, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the President's intentions are in the right place. In that same finance bill, tea packaging had been exempted from the 16% rate that previously attracted. Eco-levy was placed on every finished product that comes to this country, together with raw materials, potatoes, eggs, onions, and all that, Mr. Speaker. These are measures that we should all support, but we all agree that the information and the communication team of the President and of the government did not disseminate this information to the ground, because I am sure if that had been done, we would have gotten more support, and the people who took advantage of our young people politically to settle political scores or aspirations could not have found that kind of number that they got from our young people, Mr. Speaker. And speaking of misinformation, I am one of those people who bore the brunt of the misinformation about the finance bill, even on social media, Mr. Speaker. I have lost in my Instagram more than 10,000 followers because I was involved in a conversation on my comment section. A lady came to my page asking me, how can you as a woman support a bill that proposes to tax sanitary towels? And so I responded to try and explain to her that that is not the case, and locally manufactured sanitary towels were not going to attract the eco-levy. And so she asked me, which local sanitary towels do you use, Karen? And I responded to her, I use tampons. Because, Mr. Speaker, I use tampons. And that was taken as arrogance, as how dare you, you see? But this is stemming from misinformation, Mr. Speaker. And I have earned myself a new name in this country as Shori for tampons, Mr. Speaker. You'll come across it on social media. They are calling me Demo tampons, Shori wa tampons. They even told on me to the President when he was holding the X-Space, he was engaging the young people. They told him that some of the leaders under you are very arrogant. Senator Karen Nyamu is very, very arrogant, based on my statement saying that I use tampons. And Mr. Speaker, this is the first time, because of this finance bill supporting the government position, this is the first time in my life that I am being called arrogant, Mr. Speaker. Those who know me, those who have had the chance to interact with me, will speak of my humility, will speak of my person, my persona, my down-to-earth nature, and far from it. And far from it. And if I was misunderstood, because I certainly was, I want to say to the youth of Kenya, to the women of Kenya who got angry by my statement that I don't withdraw because I use tampons, but I am sorry for angering you, and I am one of those fighters of the young generation. And I know they were very disappointed that I did not join in this what they were agitating for against the finance bill, but it is because I believe in the President, William Samoei Ruto. And it is up to me to convince you young people that our President has the best intentions for this country. It is not up to me to join you in your misinformation. It is up to me as an ambassador of this government to show you and to win you over and to tell you, be patient. The President is working. He has shown a lot of goodwill so far. He has appointed a task force to audit our public debt, which is one of the biggest reasons why we are here today, our public debt. The Finance Bill 2024 was tailored to remedy some of those things, especially the public debt, to balance that and development, Mr. Speaker. Another thing that my colleagues have also addressed is the issue of corruption. Mr. Speaker, the EACC is letting the country down big time. Because since its inception, we are yet to see heads rolling, Mr. Speaker. We are yet to see the cases, corruption cases that they have prosecuted that have ended up having people serve jail term, or what our people would love to see, Mr. Speaker. It should not be business as usual. If they cannot deliver to our people, the EACC, let it be disbanded, and let us have another body that is going to deliver to the people of Kenya. The excuses that they give every other time will not fly anymore. And Mr. Speaker, I want to talk to the young people of Kenya, and I want to tell you to take voters' cards. Register as voters, all of you. The voice that we had, your voice that we had, it will be more powerful if it is heard through the ballot box, Mr. Speaker. And I want to assure you that in 2027, you will have no better candidate. You will agree with me that you will have no better candidate than His Excellency William Samoei Ruto. The other day he said, the measures he's taking now are akin to a cut, an examination cut. And in the fullness of time, in 5 years, he is going to sit for the exam. And on that time, when that time comes, I know you will all agree with me. So when that time comes for voters registration, I expect all of you who are in the streets to take voters' card. And with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Ranchesa.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for also allowing me to make my contribution on the state of the nation. First, Mr. Speaker, let me just first start by conveying my condolences to the families that lost their loved ones in the current maandamano, and also wish a quick recovery to those ones who got injured. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to also thank the tribeless and courageous youths, the GNZs who went to the streets to speak on behalf of this nation, speak on behalf of the Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, I'd like also to confirm that I'm one of the few leaders who tweeted and asked the President to also listen to the voices of the youths, Mr. Speaker. Thirdly, I'd like also to thank His Excellency the President William Ruto for actually conceding and allowing the the youth, some of the Gen Zs, to exercise their democratic right, and also listened to them. Mr. Speaker, I can assure you, if you look at our neighboring countries, if you look at Uganda, if you look at Rwanda, they do not have the democratic right that we have here. So I'd like just to appreciate His Excellency William Samoei Ruto for listening to these youths, listening to their grievances, and conceding not to sign the finance bill, and rather agreed to dialogue because of the protests that were there in the country. Also, I'd like also to comment, Mr. Speaker, because I've had the whole of last week I sat in this parliament listening to many senators who were trying to divert the attention of the country by saying that Harambes are bad, and now actually leading to the president banning these Harambes. Mr. Speaker, I can say I am a living proof and I'm a product of these Harambes. Some of us went to school because of these Harambes or contributions. Maybe we can just say nowadays maybe some are wrongly done, or maybe some if you are doing an Harambee, then it does not mean you, if it's genuinely from your heart, it does not mean you have to show off, or maybe, let me say, put everything on social media. But Mr. Speaker, one thing that I know these youths are doing, these youths are on the street, is because of lack of employment. That is number one. Number two, it's because of maybe where they're from. Maybe most of their parents are not able to take them to school, or maybe they have one or two different challenges, or maybe other many issues that might be facing them, Mr. Speaker. So we should not divert this country and talk about the Harambes are the issue in this country, but we should talk about the real issues. That is corruption in this country and the unemployment facing our youth, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, in terms of corruption, Mr. Speaker, I agree and also concur with my fellow senators that the EACC has failed us, and the government should really work on strengthening institutions that are tasked to fighting corruption. They should be very strict, Mr. Speaker, and also, apart from being strict, Mr. Speaker, they should also empower these institutions. Most of these institutions, Mr. Speaker, are also normally under-budgeted for. That is why they cannot achieve their mandate in pushing this, in pushing their agendas, Mr. Speaker. Talk about even the police, Mr. Speaker. If you look at their salaries, Mr. Speaker, they do not have motivation, or maybe they're underpaid for the causes or the security they're providing to this country, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I also believe that is a problem, and it is something that should be addressed, Mr. Speaker. Another thing, Mr. Speaker, that I also want to talk about is corruption down to our county governments, Mr. Speaker. And it also applies to this Senate, Mr. Speaker. If you look at our specific committees that usually call our governors here, Mr. Speaker. You look at, for example, a committee like CPAC or CPIC, Mr. Speaker, whereby we call the county government officials, we call our governors here, Mr. Speaker, and for example, I am a member, or maybe I'm the chair of ICT, and my governor is called Mr. Speaker, and you go to that committee as a friend of the committee, Mr. Speaker. We have tried to, we are looking at serious issues of the county government, which we are allowed to oversight all these county governments, Mr. Speaker, but we cannot provide oversight, Mr. Speaker, when we are at that committee, Mr. Speaker. That is why we are proposing, Mr. Speaker, amendments to these committees, and we, as the senators of specific county governments that are called by this specific committee, Mr. Speaker, we can co-chair We can co-chair these committees when these people, these governors are coming, so that we can make sure that we provide oversight to our people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another thing, Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about is public participation, Mr. Speaker. When you look at public participation, I can tell you for a fact that this is what really contributed to the GNZs go to the streets, Mr. Speaker, is communication, Mr. Speaker. It's public participation, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you 100% that I am 100% sure public participation was not well done by this government, or maybe it's not done, Mr. Speaker. I can give you an example. We have bills and policies that we are making, Mr. Speaker, and when it comes to public participation, Mr. Speaker, we normally, as committees, write on newspapers, Mr. Speaker. I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the complaints that the GNZs were making, Mr. Speaker, not only those youths of ours who are in this country were complaining, Mr. Speaker. We had our children, Mr. Speaker, from abroad, from Canada, from Australia, from what, putting back their grievances, Mr. Speaker. And this shows you that not only those ones who are here are the ones who want to participate in matters affecting this country, Mr. Speaker. We have youths from all over the world who always want to participate. And you see, the manner we are participating, or the manner we do our public participation, is going to hold barazas in the villages, Mr. Speaker, going to different counties manually to get views and to get submissions from these people, Mr. Speaker. You can imagine, Mr. Speaker, when there's one stakeholder, Mr. Speaker, that I asked or requested for his submissions, Mr. Speaker, and the submissions were brought by a pickup, Mr. Speaker, to the committee. You can imagine how much time we need to read documents, you can imagine the logistics that they use to bring all these documents to our committees, Mr. Speaker. It even makes it very hard for us as members to go through all these papers and stuff, Mr. Speaker. That is why, as the chairman of the ICT committee, Mr. Speaker, we are proposing for this government to create a tool, Mr. Speaker, to participate. We have a online public participation, Mr. Speaker. Even our proceedings here in this house, Mr. Speaker, we will add more value when we engage Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. We will add more value when Kenyans can listen to us live and can also participate or make comments on our live debates and live policies that we created in this house, Mr. Speaker. So it's also learning from the people that we represent. We can get more value listening to their views, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another thing I can assure you, and it's a fact that I want to really sensitize on, Mr. Speaker, is, and I also propose that we amend and operationalize the National Youth Council Act, Mr. Speaker, 209, to align with the Constitution of 2010, Mr. Speaker, whereby, Mr. Speaker, for example, the ministers representing the youth, Mr. Speaker, or the CECs in our county governments, Mr. Speaker, representing our youths must be youths, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can assure you the level of disconnect between the national government and the youth is very wide, Mr. Speaker. And that's why you see whatever is happening. I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that the youths who are on that street, the GNZs who are on that street, Mr. Speaker, are speaking a very different language, Mr. Speaker. If today you put Senator Khalwale as the sports minister for youth, or let me say Senator Maanzo, Mr. Speaker, he will not relate to these GNZs, Mr. Speaker. The language they are talking about, Mr. Speaker, is very different. I can assure you that Senator Maanzo does not understand. In fact, the other day at the VIP launch, Mr. Speaker, Senator Maanzo was asking me what Godha means, Mr. Speaker. And I had to take almost 20 minutes explaining to Senator Maanzo what Godha is. The same Senator Khalwale, Mr. Speaker, who is our chief whip, Mr. Speaker, our majority whip, Mr. Speaker, was asking me what Kufinish Kumalo is, Mr. Speaker. This is the same language that these youths are talking, and we have to put youth in these ministries, if not even the minister, Mr. Speaker, the advisors of these ministers.
Senator Chesang, I think you can give other examples, other examples of that language. If
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you, the words I'm speaking about, Mr. Speaker, have meanings to this youth. If you communicate with them with these words that they understand, Mr. Speaker, that is the best way they can understand, Mr. Speaker. I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, why I'm talking about this, there are even words and signs the youths, these GNZs use in terms of communication. If you look at even just the way they are dancing or they are moving their body, they mean something to communicate, Mr. Speaker. I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, if these youths came to this to this Senate, Mr. Speaker, and they stand outside here and they say, Anguka nayo, Anguka na Speaker, Mr. Speaker, that word means a word, Mr. Speaker. Why I'm trying to say this is, Mr. Speaker, is because we need to relate. I'm talking about the disconnect between the youth and the national government is really wide, Mr. Speaker. And the only way these youths can understand is putting, or not even the ministers, but their advisors or their board have to have the youths represented so that they can address the issues that are affecting them, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, you looked at the crowd that was on those streets, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we had, just because of the unemployment that we have, and you equally, you remember, Mr. Speaker, one of the youths was talking about the only mistake you did is educating us, Mr. Speaker. Those were the sentiments these youths were talking about. They are even calling, they are regretting going to school. They are even saying, the problem you people did is educating us, and that is why we are here. That is why they can read and understand everything. This is to show that how frustrated they are, Mr. Speaker. One thing I'd like to urge our government, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of our youths, who most of them are now online marketers by virtue of unemployment, and they go to the social media and teach themselves to be online marketers, Mr. Speaker. Most of our youths, majority of the youths who were on that street, Mr. Speaker, are content creators, Mr. Speaker, by nature, Mr. Speaker. You can imagine the number of youths who are on the streets made the world to know whatever is happening in Kenya, Mr. Speaker. That means the communication was loud, Mr. Speaker. And how do they communicate? Through these social media platforms, Mr. Speaker. Through TikTok, through Instagram, through Facebook, and other social media platforms, Mr. Speaker. What I want to request the government is, Mr. Speaker, if you look at Tanzania clearly, Mr. Speaker, creating unemployment in this government, Mr. Speaker, let's not talk about only the many digital hubs that we are putting, which we appreciate the President in pursuing this and being the ICT chairman. This will create a lot of jobs, Mr. Speaker. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, we have so many content creators who are here on these streets, Mr. Speaker. The government failed in terms of communication because we did not communicate these agendas properly, Mr. Speaker. And I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, if we use these content creators to sell our government agendas, to sell the government services is providing, Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that the agendas will get to the normal machinani and to our many youths, Mr. Speaker. So let us make sure we use our own youths, our own content creators. Let us employ these many youths, many content creators, Mr. Speaker, to sell our agenda, and that is a form of employment, Mr. Speaker. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to finish by saying that even the same content creators, Mr. Speaker, will sell our country, will sell the tourism in our country and the beauty of this country, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I've heard Senator Karen Nyamu also supporting the issues for the sanitary towers, Mr. Speaker. The last time I talked about this, Mr. Speaker, in this House, I talked about these sanitary towels to our young girls, Mr. Speaker.
To make it worse, reading is not my strong suit. I just confirm the bay, alafu naweka kidole bahali yake.
That's true. That's correct. I am your counselor, and my name is Sir Nicholas.
Aye, Kwani they didn't find anyone better? We don't utilize leftovers, you know.
That was very important, teacher. There, sir. You can proceed.
How about you settle down and we get this lesson kicking?
Kicking? Malmumba, in the way we don't have time for your jokes. With all due respect, get out.
Leader Jimmy Wanjigi on Ruto's debt audit task force. Listen in.
So you attach the law to any action in terms of money, right? So you look at the law, what does it say about debt? When can a country take debt? When can we take debt and how much can we take debt for? So our laws are very clear. We can only take debt for development in the medium to long term.
Yep.
If we have cash flow problems, right, we can only take a certain percentage. In fact, they say 5% of the last audited accounts, tax returns.
Yep.
So like this year, if you collected 2.2 trillion, you can only take 100 billion cash flow, which must be paid within the same year. And normally they say you can do, in fact, it's clear there, an overdraft at CBK.
Right.
Right? But any other debt must go towards a project, a development project.
Yes.
Okay.
That is in the budget. All right? Now,
so the project must be provided for in the budget.
in the budget. And in fact, in the budget, the debt is actually shown. Anything outside of that is illegal.
Okay.
Now, just to give you a synopsis, because this is very tragic. People need to understand why they are being told to raise taxes. It's because there's a monster in the room. Right?
Yeah.
And it is this payment of this debt. It is the monster. There's no other monster. Just to give you a historical analysis. When Moi handed over power to Kibaki, of every 100 shillings of tax revenue, only 28 was going to the payment of debt. And at the time, Moi had a tax revenue of 170 billion shillings.
170 billion.
170 billion.
Is what we were all paying.
Yeah, is what we were all paying. In 2001, That was the situation.
Right.
When Kibaki handed over to Uhuru Kenyatta, Kibaki had raised revenue to 1 trillion shillings from 170 by expanding the economy, not by raising tax levels, but expanding the economy, removing barriers to growth. And of every 100 shillings of that tax revenue, 18 was going to the payment of debt.
Mm-hmm.
So he had reduced it. When Uhuru handed over to William Samoei Ruto, and please, I would like to take note that Ruto was part of that government anyway.
Okay.
Tax revenue had increased to 2 trillion.
From 1.2
from 1 trillion of Kibaki in 2013 to 2023 to 2 trillion. Right? So it had gone double.
Mm-hmm.
But of every 100 shillings of tax revenue, 70 was going
to debt. From 18.
You saw William Ruto earlier this year even confirmed that.
Yep.
But he tried to get out of my 100 shilling analogy and making it 10 shillings.
Okay.
But he said the same thing. 7 shillings is going to
debt.
Of every 10 going to debt. Today, as we are talking, from the numbers I've seen from KRA yesterday, KRA are saying they've collected 500 billion in 1 month. I think, to me, that's like fantasy.
Mm.
Right? In the month of June, they've collected 500 billion. I think it's like fantasy. They've been collecting about 165 to 170, let's say 170 average per month. But now they collected 500, fine. So they went to 2.4. If you look at debt payments, they're 1.866. So it's roughly 78% today of every 100, 78 shillings of every 100 shillings is going to the payment of debt. In other words, it's getting higher and higher.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Now, when you have that situation, you got to understand that you're now borrowing to eat. You're borrowing to pay salaries. You're borrowing to pay petrol for vehicles of police. Right?
Yeah.
You are borrowing for counties. Okay?
Yeah.
So you are in big trouble.
Okay.
So the reason he is trying to raise tax is to cover that problem. And now he's unable to do it. Okay? He's unable to do it.
Mm.
Now, he decides he's going to set up a task force because of this public pressure. I think the one thing the president should understand is that he does not have much credibility. All right? With the public. And he cannot purport to do anything right now on his own. Decide he's picking names. He's deciding on which way. I'm sorry. If he does not understand that right now is a moment of consultation and wide consultation, he does not have the monopoly. He has had that free will all this time, and he has sent us into a bigger ditch. He does not have the luxury to decide on his own. He must consult. And it seems something that's prevalent with this regime. Every time they do something, it is being contested in court. It's like they don't seek legal advice properly. There seems to be some problem within. So he should not have done a task force. I have done that audit. What he should do is take from what has probably happened in the past, call a judicial commission of inquiry, make it public, like the Goldenberg one, and talk about it being public debt forensic audit. All right? Mm-hmm. Have a secretariat that includes the Auditor General. And let us all go and present to that judicial inquiry. Given a time frame of maybe a month or two, we can finish this thing. It's very simple. There's nothing hard about this thing. You just look at the law and see what was passed. So, for example, in the last 10 years, the years that we had done the audit under the Uhuru regime, all right, the budget only approved 2 trillion for loans. All right?
Cumulatively.
Cumulatively, in the 2 terms of Uhuru. Mm-hmm. Right? He took
2 trillion in shillings.
In shillings.
Okay.
Yes, 2. No, it's good
yes,
to be
important.
clear. 2 trillion.
Kenya shillings.
But outside of the budget, and it says you can only borrow what is in the budget. That is in the Constitution and it's in PFM.
Mm-hmm.
But they borrowed 6.4 trillion, which means over 4 trillion above what was approved. In other words, was not on the budget. So you ask yourself, what is going on here? All right?
Okay.
This current government, in the last 1 year, the borrowings that are on the budget are 351 billion shillings. Foreign and external loans. William Samoei Ruto has gone to borrow 1.8. All right? Which is roughly 1.5 trillion above what is in the budget. Who gave him that permission? Who gave the Treasury that permission? And anything you do not do that is lawful means that you are doing criminality. You're doing criminality. And I said very clearly here. And you can question me till the cows come home. That is criminality.
And so
and I just want to add, just to give you an overview, summary. You borrow for what is described as the deficit, the difference between expenditure and your income of taxation.
Your projected.
Your projected, not your projected deficit.
Yeah.
But your projected deficit must be in line with the law, which is that projected deficit can only be in development. It can't be amorphous at I need to pay a loan, so I just go and borrow. There's nothing like that. Hakuna kitu kama hiyo kwa laws of Kenya. So we did what you call, and the IMF is very good at doing this, what you call a primary balance, which means that you look at the expenditure of a nation, of a government, without debt payments. So we did a primary balance from July 2013 all the way to June 2023, 10 years. What was the development expenditure? 6 trillion. 6 trillion, they were only going to borrow 2 trillion for that development, by the way, in those years. So 6 trillion. Higher. You take a county, how much was it? Salaries of all government.
Yep.
Pensions. What you call operations and management costs. It came to 14.6 trillion. That is an exact number. Higher. Then you say, what has KRA said?
14.6 trillion.
In 10 years.
For
those are expenses.
All expenses.
All expenses of government.
Recurrent plus.
No. Recurrent plus development. Correct. Okay. Recurrent plus development. Without payment of debt.
Okay.
So you remove the payment of debt. It's called primary balance.
Okay.
All right? It comes to 14.6 trillion. Then you say, what were the actual tax revenues from KRA?
At the close of every financial year.
At the close of every financial year. So from July 2023 all the way to July 2013 all the way to June 2023, 10 years.
Yeah.
They came to 13.3 trillion.
KRA. Okay.
That is tax revenue.
Tax revenue.
Yes. So what is the difference there?
1 point something trillion.
1.3 trillion. Correct?
Yes.
1.3 trillion.
Yes.
So if we needed to borrow.
That was our deficit.
To run our.
For 10 years.
Okay.
1.3
trillion.
What we are saying, William Ruto has borrowed in this last 1 year outside of the budget.
It's deficit.
It's the deficit for 10 years. Now, what did we borrow in those 10 years? 7.7 trillion. Are we together?
We are.
So we borrowed 6.4 trillion above what we needed.
For what?
Which is a deficit for the next 10 years. 6.4 trillion we did not need, is not lawful. We do not owe because it's not lawful and never came to us. They cannot show us what that money did.
Okay.
On any budget, they cannot show us.
Jimmy.
And that is what you now call odious debt. Now, we are paying heavily for this that never came to our benefit. And in Mozambique, citizens went to the court of justice on something similar to our Eurobond. they called theirs a tuna bond, that had been provided by big banks such as Credit Suisse and RVM Bank of Russia, right? The defendants were the government and even parliament, and their laws are not even as good as ours. Public finance laws are not as good as ours. And they won the case. That $2 billion, the citizens won. $2 billion is odious debt.
You go and pay it.
You go and pay it. And Credit Suisse were forced to eat humble pie with RVM and even return money that had been paid for those loans. We have a similar situation, but we are talking about 6+ trillion. But I say that is what was taken outside of the law. Nobody is looking at how much we have paid.
Over time.
Now, during the period of the first audit, which ended in July 2022, we had paid loan repayments of 5.6 trillion. I want you to do your sum again, CT. 5.6 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
Those were repayments of loans from our taxes.
Mm-hmm.
The year 2022 to 2023, we paid another 1.4. How much is that? 7. This year, we have paid
1.8.
1.8. How much is that?
8.8.
Right. And the government is still telling you, you owe 11 trillion.
Wololo.
You know, really.
That is
yes,
nice.
It's never coming down. It's always increasing. We have a better exchange rate.
Yeah, but,
okay, but
Jimmy, remember we had a bad
so
exchange rate
you
not very
tell
long
me,
ago.
you're correct, and it's going to get there. I think you saw the credit rating of Moody's. Have you seen it? This morning.
It's not good.
It has gone to C, AA.
It is not good.
And remember, we said when you hit C, you're heading for default.
Kwisha wewe.
Kwisha wewe. So you're going to see that exchange rate completely change. Now, so we have paid 8.8. 6 we never took for our benefit.
But this is in
And
interest
then,
and principal.
Interest and principal. Correct. 8.8. 6 we never took. 6.4, in fact, exactly, we never took. Was never to our benefit. It's not on our laws. Okay? And we are being told we still owe 11. Do you know, this is what you call a massive Ponzi scheme. And this Ponzi scheme is our chain. It is our chain. It is our slavery chain, our modern day slavery chain. And until we yank it off, you're going to see no change in this country but pain. And you yank it off this way.
Okay, there we go.
You yank it off this way. What is not in our laws is what is called odious debt. And that we have paid to odious debt, we demand back. And if we analyze that, that means we have no debt. And without debt, that means you can free up the taxpayer from paying debt. You can reduce taxation, but you also avail something very interesting, which is domestic money for us to go and take. Right? Nobody, there's no law item that says domestic debt is funding anything in development. These bonds and bills, it does not exist. Bonds, which are long-term, have not funded any development project in our budget. We don't know why our banks, and soon we are going to call them out, why our banks are giving our money to our government for bonds that do not exist in the budget. And then our taxes are going to pay those exorbitant interest rates.
Back to the banks.
Back to the banks.
And not
This is a Ponzi scheme of some banks here, and they better stop it. They better stop it. They have created oligarchs of themselves at our expense, and they better stop it. Their time is now coming to an end. They better stop it.
Okay. Jimmy, I want to ask a series of questions. Number one, you've given us the primary balance and you calculated it. I said the World Bank is fond of doing this. Have any of our institutions done a primary balance?
Any of our institutions?
Yeah.
Yes, Treasury does so continuously to IMF.
Does it reflect the same thing?
Well, do they publicize it? They don't publicize it to us.
So we don't know?
We don't know.
Okay.
But it's something that is required by IMF consistently. So they know this. What I'm sure they do not say, right, is exactly what that deficit is.
Okay.
I think you saw there, the Auditor General says that they talk about funds being fungible. So we don't know how much fungibility they put in those figures. It seems fungible is a word that that is commonplace
can be
by the National
Can
Treasury.
be replaced.
Yes, can be replaced.
Pun intended.
Pun
Now,
intended.
second question. Our Auditor General, over the years of presenting audit reports to Parliament, has the Office of the Auditor General flagged this debt that is taken outside of the law?
Unfortunately, the Auditor General, even though in their terms of reference, they have a forensic audit mandate, and they have done so in various things. For example, they did so on the Mafia House scandal. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
They did.
Yes.
They did.
They did a forensic audit on the Mafia House scandal. So, they have never done so on the debt. Never. They do this general audit, but not a forensic.
Not forensic audit.
Not forensic audit.
But
the other office is the COB.
Control of budget.
The COB has a very clear mandate. In the Constitution, Article 228(4), the controller of budget shall oversee the implementation of the budgets of the national and county governments by authorizing withdrawal from public funds under Articles 204, 206, 207. Now, that means that the overall budget she oversees.
Yes.
And must give approval for. Now, if she's giving approval for funds to be withdrawn from the consolidated bank fund to pay a debt, it must be clear what that debt did on the budget at some time in history.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, she should not be approving it.
Okay.
So she's also highly responsible here.
Have the controller of
And
budget
culpable.
reports ever raised those issues?
Well, I think you have had them on their show, on your show here.
Reports to Parliament indicating that I declined to authorize this payment, or I authorized this payment with this condition, and the condition was later met or was not met.
I think you've seen various reports over the last year and a half to 2 years on incidences. And you've seen them both escape on the issue of, we don't have transparency on the debt register, and we don't have this, and we are seeing some things and we don't see some things. I think you've had them maybe even here on the show. But at the end of the day, any payment out of consolidated fund, and that I can tell you all debt payments are being done from consolidated fund, have had the approval of the COB.
Okay.
And how did they have that approval when they could not be attached to any budget?
A budget.
Many of them to a budget.
And a project.
Yes.
Question number, I think, 4 now. We have seen the response on the letter from the Law Society of Kenya, and even from others who have made public commentary since the establishment of the task force by the president, have said this is the job of the Office of the Auditor General, to audit all our accounts. Do you agree?
It is, as I said, her terms of reference are a forensic audit, but it has never happened. I think this situation is now out of hand.
Okay.
And I think it is beyond the Auditor General. It is beyond William Samoei Ruto. That's why I'm saying it is now a public clamor for open justice. That's why we want a judicial inquiry.
Okay.
Where we can all go and participate, and we all hear and see. And we all debate. And we bring everybody. Some of these accusations I'm making here, I would love them to be in front of the camera answering these questions. I would even love being the one who's questioning them. Right? It is beyond those offices because they do not have credibility.
Okay.
Why has the Auditor General not done it?
Sure. So
And let me advise the president. Do not think you're just going to pick if this is the route that you end up taking. Your stooges to sit on that bench.
Can I ask you, Jimmy,
it must be consultative. There's no cover up here. Right? There must be a consensus in this country that this thing which is paining us and destroying generations to come, we are actually attempting to start dealing with it.
I have to ask, Jimmy, because Kenya is highly litigious. We know this. I mean, even this task force thing was stopped at court. So people will go to court really quickly to stop. This is something that has been going on for years. And from what you're saying, that to have an open inquiry is
a judicial
one is what would make sense. Why? That going to court, do you think that going to court with this evidence is not sufficient in terms of getting an answer?
It's not sufficient because you have to collect the evidence. The Goldenberg judicial inquiry is a very good example, right? Here you had 3 judges led by, I think it was Justice Bosire.
Yes.
Who had a lot of credibility. And they called up evidence. All right? You had joint secretaries. They called up evidence. Right? And it was public. You were questioned. All right? A lot of settlements were gotten out of that, including Patney having to say, in a sense, that he had made some messes and is giving up this hotel.
Grand Regency.
Grand Regency.
Yeah.
So it was open. We all heard what exactly happened, right? And action was taken. This is a similar situation. And I can tell you, this one I doubt will be questioned in court, right? It's a judicial inquiry. In fact, the Bosire one had, I think, Bosire, I can't remember the second. I think only one was a retired. I think there was Lapelli, a lawyer. And I think I can't remember the third judge, right? Who was a member, in fact, of the judiciary at the time. So this is something the president has power to do, but as I'm saying here, he must not think he can do so unilaterally. It must be consultative. We must generally feel that it is a credible judicial commission of inquiry. It has credible people, and its terms of reference
must be clear.
Including a short term to complete. Because this is not difficult. The books are all there. The record is all there. It's not difficult.
It sounds like it would have to be corporate in terms of people coming together.
Yes. I would even want to be summoned. I will appear with my forensic auditors. Okay? We did this in about 4 months or so. All right? 4 to 5 months. Right? And that was, we had to search for the data. Okay? Which was available, is publicly available. So this can be complete as an exercise within maybe 3 months. And have a report. This is what is odious, should be suspended, right? This is what we've paid, and I can tell you at the end of it, judging from what we have already done, because this is the first forensic audit on debt, judging from what we have done, the Kenyans do not owe anybody any money. In fact, we're looking for refund. And those that we owe, that refund from those illegal parties we gave will go to paying them. Okay. That's how serious it is.
Okay. So the Bosire Commission of Inquiry had 3 members. Chairman was the Honorable Justice Samuel Bosire. The vice chairman was Nzamba Kitonga.
Yes.
The late Nzamba Kitonga. And the commissioner was Peter Lepele.
Okay.
Right. Those 3.
Yes.
And they came up with a report. They handed it over to the president with various recommendations.
And I think you had joint secretaries and all that.
You had joint secretaries in the
So you had a prosecution. I think you had a private prosecutor.
Yeah.
In that.
Yeah.
Almost like a private prosecutor.
Like Waberu Gatonye.
Correct.
And others
were
in this.
What
would we expect to get out of such a process?
That process
would
define...
What do you expect to be the outputs?
Oh, it would be very clear. It would define what is called odious. Odious meaning that any debt that was not taken within our laws, right, or has been paid outside of our laws as debt that is illegal to us. Any debt that was taken that did not come to us in any manner or form will be declared illegal. And the culprits will be recommended for charges. Now, if you do that, I can assure you we have no debt.
Okay.
And we are freed from this monster that is eating 80% today of our tax revenue. The single biggest monster to our tax revenue is one item called debt. 80%, 80 shillings of every 100 it is eating up.
Okay. Once a debt is declared as odious, then what?
Oh, then we are freed. And in fact, wherever we have paid odious debt, we ask for it back. And that's now another process. But we are freed. You imagine, this last year we have paid 1.866 to debt. Until that we are freed of that amount. We are paying a similar amount coming this year. We are freed of paying that. My friend, imagine what can happen in terms of development in Kenya.
Absolutely.
What miracle can we not have here? To do a level 6 hospital is about 10 billion. You put one in every county. You imagine the amount of roads. To do 10,000 kilometers of road would mean what?
You'll pay all your income.
Nobody here will not need this free housing, this housing fund nonsense. Right? People here will never even live in mud huts. Right? And the stimulus it will create, the catalyst it will create to this economy. You will see this jobless, unemployed.
Okay.
You will be amazed with the figure.
So now show me the difference between a judicial commission of inquiry that has a judge or two and a task force that has been set up that has the members that we've seen.
Does that
What's the
task force, in legal terms, I think I will not compete with what the LSK has said.
LSK has basically argued that the function of auditing belongs to the Office of the Auditor General,
yes,
as established in the Constitution.
That is one. I think the other, with what he established, is that he called it a forensic task force.
Yes.
And none of the parties there is a forensic auditor. None of those parties are forensic auditors. I will not even say any of those parties are experts in what is called public finance management. Nancy Onyango is very well reputed in the IMF, but she has never done public finance management here in Kenya. She may be a very good economist. Public finance management. She's actually a monetarist. She has not done public finance management. And there is no forensic auditor in that team.
They can be co-opted by the Secretariat.
No. Where is that terms of reference? If you see the terms of reference in the Gazette notice, there is no such opening. None. No such opening. That, to me, in fact, was done either shoddily or part of cover-up.
Okay.
So it has. Let's put it this way: its credibility already now is in doubt. So he should dispense with it.
But then,
I don't even know why they need to continue with the court battle. He should just revoke that Gazette notice.
How would you?
And come back and say we have a tried and tested method called a judicial commission of inquiry, right? And even seek some consultation on its membership and its terms of reference. There are enough people he can consult with. And you come up with something very credible that we can all buy into. And it must be public, because this is about public money. We all want to go and make submissions. We all want to hear others making submissions.
One nagging argument, if we just take the letter and the statement by the Law Society of Kenya, will still stand.
The Auditor General can be part of that secretariat.
The Constitution does not say that the Auditor General
a judicial commission of inquiry
in another.
A judicial commission of inquiry is a different entity. Is a different entity.
Yes.
She can be told to do her own forensic audit and submit. Jimmy Wanjigi will come with his.
You know, your reference point was the Goldenberg, the Busire Commission. If you looked at the recommendations that they made, the number of people who were censured, the number of people who were prevented from traveling because they had been seen to be complicit, people who were, their guilt was recommended. As I said, it was comprehensive. That the only thing is that not whatever was expected to have been done was not quite done.
Yeah, buana.
But one knew who the players were, something that had never happened before. One knew who had done what. Because by the time Kanyotu's name was coming out,
yes, that was a name nobody ever used to mention.
No, people didn't mention it.
So Jimmy, look at it this way, CT. That was the beginning. Today, with the amount of transparency, everyone will be exposed, and literally the recommended charges will end up seeing people
in jail.
Our time is up, Jimmy. Thank you very much for joining us. So your call is a judicial commission of inquiry to do a forensic audit of our debt, declare any debt that's outside of the law, audience.
You know, when I spoke on Sunday in Nyahururu, and by the way, I meant it, that I like the young people forward. You know, for a long time we didn't have young people in the public space, in the political space, you know. So I was very happy that you guys stepped forward to make your ideas known. And I like the fact that you were peaceful. And I like the fact that you were tribeless. And I said it. And I said I love to engage these young people who many of you qualify to be my sons and daughters. So, and I made a proposal that we're going to have a multi-sectoral youth-led group so that we pick people from different spaces, civil society, wherever. Now, you guys seem to have a different idea, and I don't mind. That is the beauty of, but you know, I needed to make, you know, a proposal. And then you interrogate it, you turn it upside down, you reject it, or just the same way you rejected the finance bill, and then we agree how to go forward. So, I am getting feedback from the proposal I made, and the strongest feedback that I'm getting is that maybe we should do this differently. Yeah, and I'm open. You know, if you want us to do it differently, if you think I should get one of you to host, you know, a session with the young people, mimi niko tayari.
But your agenda, you sold the agenda to the young people, which ultimately got you into power. So the fundamental question here is, where is the disconnect?
I think there isn't. I think there is a communication problem, which I have admitted. There is a real communication problem between what I am doing, what we agreed, what I am doing, and what you people are seeing, you know. I was very categorical, and I mean it, by the way, because it is something that I believe we must solve. Youth unemployment, many young people in different spaces, out of school, out of college, you know, including my own children, you know, they speak to me, and they have no opportunities to work, to monetize their talent, to do whatever it is that they want to do. And by the way, I have gone out of my way. I have called the leadership of TikTok. They were here. I am the one who persuaded TikTok to get Kenya to monetize the contents of TikTok. True or not true? That's the case. Because I believe there are young people who are in other spaces, who are not traditional employment spaces, but are interested in monetizing their talent. I have been deliberate about what are we doing to get young people elected. I was pleasantly surprised that even the media personalities that were interviewing me agree that housing is actually giving young people jobs, which is the truth. That our digital platform, which we are now building, we have close to 100,000 young people today who are monetizing their digital talents, their digital working spaces, in Tibet, in many other areas. And my plan was to expand that to every place in rural areas. I also, we agreed on how do we create more opportunities for young people to work through manufacturing, through industrialization, in the spaces of export of labor. We've just finished actually, an agreement with Germany on how we are going to get more young people to be employed in Germany. They need 250,000 people every year to work in their country. So these are the things that resonated with the young people during the campaign. They are the things that I am doing, and I can demonstrate with numbers what I am doing in that space to get more young people on board. Whether it is in the housing plan, which I spoke robustly about, it is in my manifesto. whether it is the export of labor, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is, you will all find it in my speeches across Kenya. And I am faithful in addressing them. There is a disconnect, which I must admit. There is a disconnect between what I am doing and what the young people feel. And that is why I want us to have this engagement. I want to listen to them. I want them to tell me, Mr. President, you are doing housing, but you're not doing it properly. Change here, adjust here. You are doing export of labor, you're not doing it properly. You have helped us with TikTok, we are not yet there. So that I need to understand, because in my very honest opinion, I thought I was implementing the plan that we had together. Let me also tell you that, I am trying to deal with a problem that is 50 years old. There has never been, guys, a deliberate government program on how to create jobs. Deliberately. We kept on saying we will grow the economy, then the economy will create jobs. This time around, I said, let's put an investment in housing, because I know how many jobs, and I can count how many people are working. Let us put money in the digital space. Let's put money here. That's what I'm doing, deliberately. This time around, differently from what has happened in the past. But you see, it's just a year and a half, I cannot solve a 4.5 million young people unemployment problem in 1.5 years. Maybe I will do 100,000 this year. I'm trying to scale it up to 300,000, push it, and see how we can do this.
The question he asked, and I feel as if it's a question that from where you were listening to what you were saying, you did actually say there's a problem with communication. And
Yes.
I agree with you there. The question is, what is the time? How do you expect, in essence, what's the plan to speak to these young people?
In the next 1 week, we must have this conversation.
Where?
In the space where you want.
So are you telling the youths right now?
I am.
Tell you where they want you to speak.
Yes, I am sending you guys. Go tell me who amongst you is going to set up, the.
So if you set it up by the end of this week, say Tuesday, will you be there?
Yeah.
Will you be there?
Say end of this week, maybe Thursday, Friday.
Yes.
Why not? I'll be there.
And the biggest question here is that this was the Gen Z movement. We are leaders. There is nobody like the face of it. So I'm just asking that, how do you plan to deal with this? Because we've seen some people coming out that they are the leaders, but they have been labeled imposters. So I don't know if already you've identified how you're going to identify those who are going to represent the youth in that conversation.
You're the one who is telling me you are leaderless. It's not me. I'm not the one saying. I have. It is not in my place to identify the leaders for you guys. You guys should sit down, either identify your leaders, who will then engage with me, or if you do not want to identify your leaders, tell me how else you want us to talk. I am open. When I suggested the multi-sectoral thing and the multi-sectoral setup, I thought you were going to say, okay, we're going to organize ourselves. This is how we are going to participate. And by the way, the whole of that setup, I want it to be about young people. Civil society, young people from civil society. Religious organizations, let us get young people from religious organizations. Professional bodies, let's get leaders from professional bodies who are young people, I am not saying that religious leaders must be the traditional religious leaders. We have very many young people in churches. They should be able to step forward and come and engage with me on how to take this forward. If you guys are saying you do not want the traditional way things have been done, you want it to be youth-led, you want it to be youth-owned, you want it to be, I am open. If I put out a suggestion, you guys tell me, and then it becomes very, very difficult if I don't know who to deal with. At least I am here. But I don't know who now. Is it Ms. Kidinji here? Is it Wanjuguna here, or who? Who do I deal with? So this is. So whether it is Thursday, Friday, Muki Pangana, mimi niko.
So you've given us those two?
Yes.
So, Mr. President, basing on the recent protest, and especially after you publicly announced that you're not going to be signing the post-financial year, there was increase of the chance of Ruto as to calling for your resignation. Are you aware of this public sentiment? And if so, how do you plan to address that specific grievance by the Gen Z specifically?
You know, people are entitled to say whatever they want to say, you know. This was about the finance bill, you know, and we are a democracy, you know. We are not a mob. We are a people, you know. We are a democracy. There is how to engage. There is how, if you want to remove the president of Kenya from office, there is how you do it, you know. Either you wait for an election or you do whatever the Constitution provides for. And I have no issue with anybody doing whatever it is that they want to do. But ultimately, we must solve the problem. The problem cannot be a person. Debt is not a person. Unemployment is not a person. All the challenges we have as a country cannot be sorted out. Let us not be simplistic to say, if you remove this person, the problems will end. I don't think that is where we want to go. We want to be honest with ourselves. How do we solve the problem? Let us not run away from the problems we have as a nation by rounding it up and saying, if we lynched this man and got rid of him, all our problems will end. They will not. You know, we have seen countries that have done that. The countries have never become the same. So I think we just need to be rational. We need to be, you know, to step back and say, okay, how do we solve the problems that affect our country?
Mr. President, you mentioned that earlier on it was about the finance bill. Why do you feel these young people, even after ruling and deciding that you're not going to be signing this proposed bill, why do you feel they felt the need to call for your resignation?
Maybe you should tell me, because you are among the young people. Maybe you should tell me, so what was this about?
I think the issue that many people are having, especially the Gen Z, is the issue of, besides now the approach of your administration of taxes, is the only issue of poor governance. And as much as yes, you're calling for a conversation with the young people, these young people, we the young people, want to see our government act on some of the things that you really promised us. So besides the conversation that you have openly declared radiantly to Gen Zs, what are some of the actionable things that you will be doing as the head of the administration to convince these young people that you have our interest at heart?
In matters like, you know, I have a whole program about how I intend to deal with the challenges that affect young people. Let's put that aside. And nobody seems to have a quarrel with that. What the issues are is matters to do with governance, you know, rule of law issues. Are we living within our means? That's the question. Are we living large? Are we spending more than we should be spending? Do we need the office? Do we need certain offices? And I have agreed with you that certain offices will go. You know, as part of building the new reality. You know, certain offices will go. Certain actions I must do. You know, and that's why I was saying here. I am interrogating what it is that I can do to make sure that we live within the reality that now we are in.
Another issue that we have, the Gen Zs have, is a section of members who come, leaders who come, they are floating their opulence. I think that's one area, especially in social media. As the head of the government and state, how do you intend to maneuver this whole scenario? And even before you respond to that, what's your general overview? What's your perception of some of these leaders floating their wealth and money and how expensive they're living lives?
I have seen it. And it is a societal problem. Believe you me, all these MPs, they are elected by us, the people of Kenya. And there is, you all admit, there is a lot of money spent in electing people. That's the real challenge that we have. So people are not elected largely on account of what it is that they will do. People are elected because they are well-resourced, you know. And unfortunately, this is the product we end up with, you know. This is the product we end up with. So this is something we must interrogate together. We must all agree, because we get the leaders we elect, right? So these are the people. I did not elect all these members of parliament or the other people. Maybe the ones I have appointed, those ones I can take account, you know, and deal with. And we should, because even in my own eyes, it is not right. People, you know, flaunting money, you know, people using the space in pulpits to, you know, prosecute politics. And all that is fine. And that is why I'm very happy with this moment, that we are all of us going to face up to this reality and call ourselves to order and do that which we must do. And the conversation that was around here, I met some of the church leaders, I met even my own PG, and even them, they were saying, yes, let us abolish Harambes. Yes, let's do something about our situation. We must live within our means. So it is a very healthy conversation, and I am all in.
Despite the commitment to kind of hold on that and stop it, and despite the commitment to what it is, Mr. President, we also have seen you being part of the Harambee Council. And I mean, the conversation as it has been spiraling, it has also been questioned, why does the president have to attend every Sunday service in whatever country? Why does the president have to be a church service every Sunday? And by this, we also tag along the legislators who end up being very political. Is this something that you also tend to put a cap on, including you yourself doing government?
Moses, I am a Christian. I cannot stop going to church, you know? And I am very clear in my mind. And whenever I go to church, you cannot accuse me of doing politics in church. I rarely speak matters politics in church, because my upbringing was such that church is a different place. It's a place where we worship God and we do the things that we do in church. As for going to church, I must tell you that I cannot stop going to church. I will go to church. Maybe the thing we need to do is, and whenever I go to church, like for example, today I was in Transmara, and I went to a local church And the governor of that area came, and the former governor. The MP did not come. I think because they didn't know, because I just decided to drive to church, just like normal. It was not a fundraising, it was not, a big congregation. It was just a normal church service. Many times, I go to church here at Milimani, AIC, many times. And sometimes it's not even recorded. Many times, I go to NPC Karen. And even many times, there are no cameras. I go to church every Sunday, and more than being recorded, I go to more Sundays that have no even record of media than those who have a record of media. Of course, I also go to Sunday services like the one I was in Nyahururu, when I'm invited, say the inauguration of a bishop. It's a big event. When I'm invited, I go. And it's not a fundraising, it's just a church event. And as a Christian, if you are invited, you attend. But I agree with you, there is some conversation going forward whether how we do it so that it remains a religious issue and not politics.
So, Mr. President, there are a couple of demands that you made last week from the movement that has brought this conversation forward.
Yes.
There were